Why did God put a gecko in your life? Not a dog, not a cat. A creature that doesn't even understand what love is, and still stayed. In this video, we're going to look at what psychology, science, and something deeper have all quietly been saying about that small creature in your life. By the end, you'll understand why your gecko appeared at the exact moment it did. What is actually happening in your brain when you bond with something that can't hug you back? And what God may be saying to you through the most unexpected messenger he ever chose. Behavioral psychologists who study human-animal bonding have identified a specific attachment mechanism that activates in reptile owners, one that is more similar to parental bonding than most people realize. And what they found changes how you understand everything you feel toward that small creature. Think about when your gecko came into your life, not the day you bought it, the season you were in, the quiet nights, the empty room, the version of you no one else saw. Were you going through something? A loss, a transition, a quiet falling apart that you hadn't told anyone about? Most people don't find geckos at their happiest moments. They find them at their most searching ones. And psychology has a name for what happens next. It's called meaning-making, the brain's built-in drive to find narrative and purpose in the events of our lives, especially during emotional turning points. When an animal enters your life during a period of grief, loneliness, or transition, the brain doesn't file it under coincidence. It files it under anchor, a meaning anchor, a moment the mind marks as, this changed something. Studies on human-animal attachment show that people who find reptiles during major life transitions are significantly more likely to describe that animal as sent, not adopted, not purchased, sent. Not because they're being sentimental, because the timing was too precise to feel accidental. Your gecko didn't just enter your home, it entered the exact moment your life needed something to stay about. There is a pattern in how something divine moves through this world. It almost never arrives with noise, and this is where most people miss it entirely. In parts of Southeast Asia, a gecko entering your home isn't ignored, it's watched. Because in those cultures, that moment means something has just crossed from the outside into your space. Not randomly, purposefully. In Polynesian tradition, the gecko was a guardian, a creature believed to carry messages between the human world and something beyond it. Not a symbol of luck, a messenger. In indigenous traditions across the Pacific, the gecko represented shedding, the spiritual act of releasing an old self so a new one could breathe. Every culture that paid attention to the natural world noticed the same thing about this creature. It shows up quietly, and only the people who need it notice. Now look at your own life. God didn't send you a creature that performs. He didn't send you something loud, something that demanded your attention with barking or crying or need. He sent you something that simply arrived and waited to see if you would notice. The question was never whether the gecko was a sign. The question is whether you were paying enough attention to receive it. Here is what is actually happening inside you, and it has a name. In behavioral psychology, it's called caregiving attachment, the same bonding system that activates when a parent cares for a child. Not romantic attachment, not friendship, something older and more fundamental than both. It activates through one thing, responsibility for a life that depends on you. Every time you feed your gecko, clean its enclosure, adjust its temperature, watch its behavior, your brain is running the same neurological program it runs for any living being you have chosen to protect. But here's where this gets uncomfortable. Your gecko learned your scent, your routine, the sound of your footsteps, the warmth of your hand, and over time, its nervous system filed you under one entry in its survival database, safe. Not because it trusts you the way you think, but because it has learned you haven't hurt it yet. And in a world that has probably made you feel like too much or not enough, you became someone's entire definition of safety. Studies on reptile keepers confirm what owners already quietly feel. Attachment scores for reptile owners fall within the normal range for companion animals, sometimes higher than for outdoor-kept dogs. Not because the gecko performed affection, because you chose to love something that didn't have to love you back. And here's the part most people never realize. Your gecko didn't change your life. It revealed what was already missing. The need to be needed, the quiet that your soul had been searching for. The uncomplicated, unjudged experience of simply being present with something alive. Your gecko didn't come to love you. It came because you needed something that wouldn't leave. You didn't bond because it loved you. You bonded because you chose to love something that didn't have to love you back. It didn't need to love you, because it gave you something harder to find, a reason to love at all. And this is the part nobody wants to admit. Loneliness is not just an emotion. Neuroscience has shown that chronic loneliness activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. It raises cortisol. It suppresses immune function. It slowly, quietly dismantles hope, not all at once, but day by day, in the spaces between the people who were supposed to stay and didn't. Most people suffering from it don't even call it loneliness. They call it being tired, feeling like they're watching their own life from a distance, not being understood by anyone who was supposed to understand them. And then something small arrived. Something that didn't need an explanation, didn't require you to perform, didn't leave when you were difficult or distant or broken. It just stayed. And for someone who has felt like everything leaves eventually, that changes more than you realize. A silent room, a dim light, a small heartbeat that isn't yours but depends on you. That image, that moment, is not just peaceful. It is the first time in a long time that something needed you to be okay. And that need, quiet as it was, pulled something back to the surface in you. This is why even low-interaction animals like reptiles are now being included in therapeutic environments. A mental health trust in the UK began bringing geckos and other reptiles into inpatient psychiatric wards, and the results weren't dramatic. They were quiet. Patients reported feeling calmer, more grounded, more present, more capable of facing what they hadn't been able to face alone, not because the gecko spoke to them, but because something alive had chosen to remain near them. Psychologists call this non-judgmental presence, the experience of being with a living being that has no agenda toward you, no expectation, no memory of your failures, just presence. And now, late at night, the room is quiet, the world has gone still, and there's a small creature under a warm light, breathing, existing. And for the first time all day, so are you. That moment is not accidental. That moment is what healing looks like before it has a name. It didn't heal you all at once. It stayed long enough for you to slowly heal yourself. Maybe your gecko was just a lizard. Maybe it was just a decision you made on a quiet afternoon that you've never been able to fully explain, even to yourself. And maybe it wasn't sent to fix your life. Maybe it was sent to show you what was missing in it. Because sometimes God doesn't send healing. He sends a mirror. Something small enough that you'll actually look at it. Something quiet enough that you'll actually hear what it's showing you. Or maybe God knew exactly what season you were in. He knew the silence had become heavy. He knew you had been carrying something that no one around you could see. He knew you needed something living, something that would look at you without judgment, stay without conditions, and ask nothing of you except that you show up. And he chose the smallest possible messenger. Not because your need was small, but because he knew you would slow down for it. He knew that you, specifically you, would notice the small thing, would stop, would watch it, would begin, without meaning to care for it. And in the daily act of caring for something fragile and alive, you would quietly begin to remember that you were worth caring for too. Psychologists call this emotional imprinting, the way that caring for a dependent being rewires the brain's sense of purpose, competence, and self-worth. Small, consistent acts of care, feeding, watching, protecting, rebuild the parts of a person that loss and isolation had quietly dismantled. God knew the science before the scientists named it. He knew that the most broken hearts don't need grand gestures. They need a reason to show up tomorrow. And sometimes that reason has scales, and ancient, unblinking eyes, and a warmth that only exists because you chose to create it. Your gecko didn't come to be your cure. It came to be your companion. And in that quiet companionship, in the stillness of a small creature resting on a human hand that needed to feel chosen, God was saying something he has always been saying. I see you. I haven't forgotten you. I sent you something small so you would know. Even the smallest things in your life are held in my hands. You didn't just get a gecko. You were given a message, written not in words, written in the quiet daily faithfulness of a small creature that stayed. And maybe that's why it was never loud. Because the message that changes your life is the one you almost missed. And maybe that's why it found you. If this gecko came into your life at a moment you needed it most, you already know this wasn't random. Tell me when it found you. If you love your gecko, you will subscribe the channel for more lovely videos. Thanks for watching.